Here is Greenock, the 6th largest borough in Scotland, with a population of nearly 80,000, and boasting an anchorage, one of the most beautiful in the world, wide enough and deep enough to shelter the entire home fleet. It appears a handsome town as we approach it from the West End. Wide tree-lined streets reveal pleasant houses in leafy gardens. This district was planned. Men of taste and intelligence decided in advance upon the line of the roads and upon the type of houses which should be built on them. But let us move farther eastward. This district was not planned. Look at this muddle of dwelling houses, a factory chimney, shops, and a railway station. While the screen presents some further examples of the confusion between housing and industry which clutters the middle and eastern districts of the town, reflect for a moment on Greenock's history. From a mere cluster of fishermen's huts at the end of the 16th century, it grew rapidly but spasmodically. As the trade with the Americas developed, industries such as shipbuilding and sugar refining flourished, attracting workers from the highlands who had to be housed speedily and cheaply. In the feverish booms that came and went, factories and houses were rushed up side by side in the unfortunate juxtaposition you see exemplified here. But Greenock's expansion had its limits. Placed on a narrow strip of land between hills and sea, it had to climb the slopes behind to accommodate an increasing population. Do you notice how awkwardly these houses are placed between the railway and the hill face? There are mills, too, on these hillsides, many of them dating from the water power era and built on the lines of falls provided by the Delling burn and the Carts burn, or drawing their source of power from the artificial cascades of the Cut. After water power came steam power, and indirectly consequent on the researches of James Watt came Bell's Comet, flying between Greenock and Glasgow, and the Britannia, the first steam-propelled Cunarder, which made Greenock its eastern terminus. With the revival in shipbuilding following the Napoleonic Wars, the shipyards expanded and new docks were constructed. The East India Harbour was completed in the year of Trafalgar. Between 1878 and 1886, the James Watt Dock, the Western Tidal Harbour, and the Great Harbour were built. Railways were laid to serve these docks and the shipyards beside them. These lines were laid down at a time before the value of foreshore space was fully realized, and consequently they cross and recross main thoroughfares and make impossible any single large industrial site undivided by their tracks. Where they cross main roads, they frequently cause extreme traffic congestion, when rail traffic coincides with peak periods on the roads. Observe what happens when a delay occurs to wagons at a shipyard gate. Vehicles stretch in a solid block for hundreds of yards on either side of the obstruction. Between trade booms, however, came slumps, when factories fell derelict and shipyards stood idle. During these periods, houses were neglected for lack of money and slums increased. Overcrowding became a major problem with the influx of new workers during the past war. Finally came the Blitz of May 1941. Much valuable public property was demolished in the Central Station area, while the loss of many dwelling houses made the shortage of accommodation desperately acute. Let us sum up what we have seen so far. Here is a borough, fairly prosperous, with great potentialities in its deep water harbours and anchorage, with steady prospects in several industries, but congested, overcrowded, and considerably damaged by air attack. Your town council and officials, bearing all this in mind, approached Sir Frank Mears, who prepared a scheme for Greenock's future, utilizing her natural resources to the full and overcoming these problems of transport, housing, and industry. To attract deep water trade, at present going to other ports, Greenock's harbours could be reconstructed to take bigger ships. This increased tonnage must bring imports, which can be processed locally. Ships cannot go away empty. They must return laden with locally produced goods. There are many old established industries based on the import trades and capable of expansion. One of the oldest is sugar refining. Ships have been bringing raw sugar to Greenock from the West Indies for hundreds of years now. In the local factories, it is refined into syrup and sugar by boiling in these large vats. Sugar is weighed out in sacks, while syrup is distributed in the familiar tins for dispatch by road and rail all over Britain. Many other forms of food processing could be attempted in Greenock, drawing their raw materials from abroad and re-exporting the finished products to other ports. Greenock knitwear is well known for quality all over Britain. In our hosiery factories, wool is spun and knitted into various garments such as socks and stockings, jerseys and pullovers in a variety of patterns and styles. This is another industry capable of considerable growth, for the demand for first-class Scottish knitwear is worldwide. Coopering is an ancient craft dating from the days when barrels were required for the salt herring trade. There is a growing market for hand-produced goods, and this cooperage specializes in furniture in the shape of barrels for home, office, or living quarters afloat. Second to none are our heavy industries. This fine example of a marine diesel engine is typical of the work being done in our heavy engineering shops. In our shipyards are built ships of almost every description. The peak period of the war years has passed, but there are still enough orders on the books to ensure work for some time to come. At present, there is no lack of work in the shipyards, but a slump in heavy industry would cause tragic mass unemployment. If Greenock is to avoid this risk in the future, she must have almost as many people engaged in light industry or distributive and service trades as there are in heavy engineering and shipbuilding. Ships launched from our yards go out to every port in the world. Now, to our plans. One of the main proposals of Sir Frank Mears is the zoning of industry and housing so that they are kept apart. The industrial zone will be the waterfront and central station area, east and north of the Glasgow-Gourock railway line. For the central area of the town, a completely new layout is contemplated. This part will be the business, administrative and shopping district. There will be a bus station, a covered market, new municipal buildings facing the Well Park, a community centre and a health centre. A new approach and buildings have been planned for the central station. A street of shops is designed to replace the congested area demolished by bombing. You have seen the need for improvements in traffic conditions. This map shows the new road planned to relieve congestion in the main street and to link up the rather isolated housing areas on the lower hillsides. It will leave East Hamilton Street at Mackenzie Street and proceed on a higher level to Ingleston Street. This old school will be demolished as it stands in the way of development. From this point in Ingleston Street, it will pass in front of these twin chimneys. This new artery should materially lessen the delays on Main Street by removing much local traffic. It will also be the main thoroughfare of the new central area. And now we review the housing problem. Even these rows and rows of new houses are not sufficient to meet the demand. Many new blocks of flats have already been built, such as these at High Street. Several sites in the older part of the town have thus been rebuilt. But it must be remembered that only about 1/4 of the previous number of houses can be rebuilt on a cleared site. In addition, it must be borne in mind that many areas in the lower town are being reserved for industry under the zoning proposals. and are therefore unavailable for housing development. Here is the architect's impression of multi-story flats, which it is proposed to erect on a few selected sites within the borough. Service lifts will of course be in operation. Housing schemes in the suburbs have been in progress for many years now. The site at Ochny is in a pleasant spot, on a breezy hill shoulder, with wide, sunny streets and magnificent views north and west over the Clyde estuary to the Cowell Hills. It is still expanding, although its limit will soon be reached. It cannot be enlarged indefinitely, however, for open spaces and agriculture also have their claims upon the land. This bulldozer was employed in clearing the site at Larkfield, where a large area was acquired for housing. Work is now completed on roads, drainage and water supply, and another 800 houses will soon be in occupation. To build these houses, the latest methods of rapid construction were applied. In the short time since this film was made, the whole appearance of this scheme has changed. So rapidly can this type of house be constructed. Sir Frank Mears has prepared plans for an ideal scheme at Dunrod. A triangular area of about 200 acres has been selected as the most suitable site. It lies directly on the Weems Bay railway line and is on a small plateau above but concealed from the Inverkip Road, so that it will in no way interfere with the amenities of the Kip Valley. So great is Greenock's overspill population that the Clyde Valley Regional Planning Scheme suggests that a satellite town should be set up at Bishopton to take some 30,000 people. This, however, is 10 miles away. But as you will see, from Greenock to Dunrod is only 5 miles, and therefore the corporation favour this alternative. This is a model of the proposed scheme at Dunrod. We are looking at the model from the southeast end of the Weems Bay railway line and will make an aerial survey of the district. Running through the center of the scheme is a natural ravine. In this valley is a stream, and on its banks woodland walks will be laid out. This is a more general view looking west across the ravine. Near the railway line, a small site for light industry may be set up, providing work in the immediate vicinity for quite a large number of the people of Dunrod. The proximity of this scheme to the railway line means, of course, easy transport to Greenock and elsewhere. Good bus services will also be provided. In the central area, there will be an open-air theatre built in a natural hollow on the banks of the stream. Here will be presented summer performances of music and drama. Among the larger buildings to be seen are a church, schools, and a community centre. For this is to be not merely a housing scheme, but a neighbourhood with all the amenities of a small town. Community centres are being established in the town as well. This is the Rankin Park Centre. A community centre provides a focus for a neighbourhood, where people can meet for sport or other social activities, and where local matters can be discussed in a friendly atmosphere. There must be clinics for babies and children in our replanned town. Greenock already has this fine example of a child welfare clinic. But more are needed, and every district must have its own. The new central block of health offices will include a baby clinic among its many services. There is a play centre at this clinic where children can play under careful supervision while mother is busy. Improved maternity services were also part of the original scheme, although this responsibility has now been assumed by the state. Greenock has a maternity hospital of the latest design in the Rankin Memorial Hospital, to which further extensions and improvements were planned. This is the modern extension of the infirmary at Larkfield. Here too, under the National Health Service, the state has relieved the local authority of a great but cheerfully borne responsibility. Greenock has planned considerable extensions and improvements in her hospital system. These will now be transferred to the Regional Hospital Board. New schools are also necessary to replace out-of-date buildings. The high school is a good example of a modern school standing in its own recreation grounds. More parks and open spaces are essential in addition to those such as the Well Park, Lady Alice Park and Lady Octavia Park. Not only children but adults too need recreation, and it would be bad policy to cover all our open spaces with housing. More well-equipped play parks such as this must be provided. Play streets are safe, but poor substitutes for play fields. Here is the architect's drawing of the new Wellington Park, which will provide sports facilities for people of all ages. The grounds will be laid out for various games, and the large and well-appointed pavilion will have ample accommodation for several teams. And now, as we come to the end of our pictorial review of the plans for the new Greenock, let us briefly summarize the main proposals. Houses, schools, clinics and playgrounds are all immediate necessities. And as you have seen, work on these is either in progress or in preparation. While all this is going on, much thought is also being given to bringing new industries into the district. Greenock's plan for new roads and docks depends on this. These matters are essential to Greenock's comfort and prosperity. It is your privilege as citizens of Greenock to ensure that these plans are not shelved in dusty obscurity, but are put into operation as soon as circumstances permit. Then indeed shall Greenock flourish like the proverbial green oak tree.
I'll sing about a wee town that stands upon the Clyde. It is the town where I was born that fills my heart with pride. My mother often told me, as she crooned me on her knee, that Greenock took its name frae the green oak tree. A main street paved with brine and ballasted with fishes that stretches all the way to China. I've travelled down that long and twisty road. I've seen the rising sun on Fujiyama. In Greenock, you can see the same sun, now and then. It's not too bad a town to come home to. It's not too bad a town to grow up in. I wonder if there was a special green oak tree. I know I never found the thing myself, but I found a lot of other things. I remember now the feel of growing up here, and the feeling there was something in the air, something for me, but always round the corner. That isn't quite what I meant, but carry on, son. Why should you walk when folk like me are driving? I know that look. It's just like mine. I was a born dreamer, and I'll bet you are too. Another day, another smiling morn. Now, there's a thing I noticed about Greenock. It's sometimes hard to get a glimpse of water. They've penned the Clyde behind great gates of iron, and here be monsters made of steel and iron. This was the place a man could be a giant. Moving steel. Making ocean liners with his fingers. Wearing dungarees like robes of office. Moving monstrous things as big as houses. They were the masters. Such ordinary men, it made you wonder. Well, this is a new world wonder. They started launching this thing by the front end. Don't tell me that's a stern. It's more like a tenement. I'd sign the pledge if I saw that thing in mid-Atlantic. But no, it's not so silly, not in Greenock. Some other folk have made a bit to fit it, and anyone can tell that that's the blunt end. They fasten up the bits with sticky paper. Anyway, they make it seem like child's play. It isn't sticky paper, it's a secret. You'll never see the join or how they make it. They do their job and leave you guessing. A town that stretches out across the oceans. and stretches out and stretches out and stretches. And when it's stretched so far, it goes on stretching. One end in Greenock, one in Pernambuco. And that was where I sailed when I was dreaming.
Hey, you! Get the hell out of there!
Always the ships, always the water. I had sea in the blood and sea in the brain. I knew one day that I would be out there. And in the meantime, there's no harm in dreaming.
A double-armed steel pillar through crossheads. The pumping units are connected to the cylinders by means of British standard steel-drawn piping with Kellering fittings. Since there is
I think a lot of us in foreign places are steering gear and pumps and everything. We always had the urge to make things better. Well, like James Watt, he lived just down the road there. Aye, that electric Watt who gave us all the steam engine. We manufacture see-through windows. And fancy things my granny never heard of. Things of wood or plastic, steel or paper. Stuff to last forever. Stuff to swallow. Well, that figures. We've always been a ships and sugar town. Never mind your London Times or Paris Soir. The Greenock Telegraph's the umbilicus that reaches out to India and Texas. I've read it in Dahomey and Alaska and felt that home was only round the corner and touched the stone of solid Greenock tenements.
Just the usual.
Fancy a pint. Have you flitted yet?
Day before yesterday. No bad, I suppose.
I don't fancy the new flats much.
Ah, they're fine inside. Wife's quite happy.
But it's just no the same Greenock anymore. They're fair chopping the place up. It could be anywhere.
Haven't they chopped up the West End? Plenty of money there, boy.
They knew what they were doing 100 years ago.
Ah, it's quite like it, though. Wife likes a walk up there.
We're all right for parks. I spent plenty of time there when I was a kid.
churches. Yeah, it's packed with churches.
Dozens.
I saw something in the paper the other day.
Don't tell me they're abolishing income tax.
No. See the mariner's home. You know, I mean, see the size of the place. Guess what it costs to build it? 8,000 quid.
8 grand. You couldn't build a dog kennel for that these days.
8,000. Straight up.
These hard Old Greenock sailors knew the ropes. They learned the sea before I even smelt it. The ships may change, but not the fascination. There were giants in the land when I was a boy. I reckoned this was sophistication with a capital S. The men who came here came in cashmere coats, and all the women wore tiaras. And I sometimes wondered how you joined them. A man can live in dreams for half a lifetime, and now and then, just give his dreams a polish. Old Greenock's no a bonny town, oh no, it is to me. I always hear wild music drifting out across the sea. I fancy I can hear the very stones alive with song. I know I'm still a dreamer, but I'm maybe not so wrong. They've always thought big in Greenock. But when we dreamers get started, not at all a bad wee town, Greenock, even though now and then it gets a bit above itself.